Hi everyone, okay, welcome back. This is the second lesson of Year 6 for Science. It's also the second lesson of our Year 5 catch-up curriculum of properties and changes of material. If you've not already done the first science lesson, either in school or the online version, which you can find on the YouTube channel, you need to go back and do that now because some of the stuff we'll be talking about in this lesson is covered in that lesson. So our learning objective for this lesson is to demonstrate that dissolving, mixing and changes of state are reversible changes. That's what we hope to have achieved by the end of this online session today. Just like last week, we've got some key vocabulary for this lesson today. So when you're doing some writing, when you're reflecting on this lesson, this is the kind of vocabulary you need to be using. So dissolved, undissolved, solution, mixture, filter, sieve, evaporate, condense, melting, separate, reversible and irreversible. And a few of those words were in the last session, so hopefully you already know what they mean. I wonder then if from the last session you can remember what some of these things are. I wonder if you can remember what a solution is. I wonder if you can remember what a suspension is. And then just a little bit of an extra thought. Were the changes that we made last week when we were separating those different materials and mixing them together actually as well, were they reversible changes or irreversible changes, and why? Pause the video there and have a little think and see if you can answer those questions. So a solution, you should have said, is when there's a mix of a solid and a liquid, but the solid is soluble and has dissolved into the liquid. A suspension is again when there's a mix of a solid and a liquid, but this time the solid is insoluble and doesn't dissolve. So we can see the solid floating around in the liquid. For example, last week our solution was salt and water when the salt dissolved into the water, and our suspension was sand and water because the sand didn't dissolve into the water. And then it says, were the changes we made last week reversible or irreversible? If you remember, when we mixed them together with all four of our mixtures, we were able to get back our original materials in the original state that they were. So all of those changes were reversible changes. We could change them back to their original state. Your first task then is to write down these two key words from this lesson, reversible and irreversible. If you already know what they mean, then you can write down the definitions and then go and check them in the dictionary or online. If you're not sure what they mean, from the example I've just been given then, maybe you can go away and research what are reversible changes and what are irreversible changes. So that will be your first task, because knowing the difference between reversible changes and irreversible changes is going to be some of the key knowledge we're going to need not only this week, but next week as well. Here is our main task for this week, and it's going to carry on to next week as well. So our task is we're going to be designing an experiment. We want to experiment to see if we can prove that these changes that I've listed here on the board, mixing, dissolving and changing of state, if they are reversible changes. We don't want to just say that they're reversible, changes that we can turn back to the original states. We want to prove that they are reversible changes. So I'm going to move myself out of the way and you can see the main question that we're going to be looking at. Can you plan and carry out an investigation to prove that one of these changes is reversible? So what you're going to do is you're going to pick one. You're going to pick mixing, dissolving, or changes of state. So for example, melting, changing something from a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a gas. And you're going to show me through an investigation plan that you can create an investigation that proves that these are reversible changes. Now I'm going to do an example with you. And if you're struggling, you can kind of come along with my example. After you watch my example, you might be able to create one for your own type of change, either mixing, dissolving, or changes of state. The one I'm going to do an example with you with is changes of state. So I'm going to pick changes of state and I'm going to design an experiment that proves that changing of state, for example, melting, is a reversible change. here is your investigation template, which you can download off the Year 6 page on the website. So the top box says the aim of the investigation is, well, the aim of my investigation is to prove that melting is a reversible change. So that's what I'll put in there. The next box along on the left-hand side says what variables can be changed. So variables are the things we might alter to see if it impacts the results of our investigation. So for me, I might try different things, like I might try different types of chocolate to see that is the change still a reversible change even if I'm using different types of chocolate. I might try the quantity of chocolate. I might see if I use more chocolate, is it still a reversible change or is it an irreversible change? I might try maybe varying the temperatures of my chocolate to see if the temperature impacts it. Those are the kind of things I could change to see if melting is always a reversible change. And I'd write each of those in one of those boxes. So I might fill 3 of those boxes. You don't have to fill all 6. The next one says, what variables can be measured or observed? So which variables am I going to be watching for? Well, there's only really one for me. I'm going to be watching the change of state. That's what I'm going to be looking at. Does it change from a solid to a liquid when it melts, and then does it change back from a liquid to a solid? That's what I'm going to be looking at. And so I'm going to take that one from what variables can be measured and observed down to we will be measuring and observing, because that's the only one I'm looking at. For the we will change, I'm going to pick one of those 3 ideas that I had. So I think I'm going to go with the types of chocolate. So that's what I would take down into the we will change. So I'm going to change the different types of chocolate to see if the change of state is always reversible. So my question is, and I'm going to combine what we're going to be changing with what we're going to be observing. My question will be something along the line of, will changes of state in chocolate always be reversible no matter the chocolate type? Probably think of a more succinct version of that question, but that's my first draft. So that question includes what I'm going to be changing and what I'm going to be looking for, the change of state and the types of chocolate. If I'd done this with amount of chocolate, I might say, my question might be, does the amount of chocolate used during a change of state affect whether it is reversible or irreversible? So I could do a different question with the amount of chocolate. So really, you can really tailor your investigation to look at different things, but the core of it is it always a reversible change when we're trying to change it back? And the next box says, we will keep it fair by keeping these things the same. So everything else now needs to be the same. So if I'm using different types of chocolate and seeing if I can change the state one way and then back again into a reversible change, then I'm going to need to keep the method that I heat up my chocolate and the time that I heat up my chocolate the same, and the temperature I heat it up to. I'm going to need to make sure that the temperature that I cool my chocolate to and the time and the method that I cool my chocolate is all the same. I'm going to have to make sure that the quantity of chocolate, I can't, if I'm using, for example, a Bounty and a Galaxy Caramel, I can't have 3 Bounty bars and do the experiment with that and then use half of a Galaxy bar. I need to keep the quantity of chocolate the same, otherwise it won't be fair. Our prediction is, well, I think that no matter what type of chocolate I use, the actual chocolate change will be reversible. That it will go from a solid to a liquid when I heat it up and a liquid to a solid when I cool it down. However, I think depending on what other ingredients are in the chocolate, this might impact the reversible change slightly. For example, like I said, if I've got a Bounty bar and it's got coconut bits in it, how's that going to impact the change? Well, I think that it might just aesthetically, visually change the chocolate bar. I don't think it will impact too much on the actual chocolate changing from a solid to a liquid and liquid to a solid again, but we'll find out. And I think this because while the chocolate itself can change states, the other ingredients involved can't change state, not necessarily, especially if it's things like nuts. When I heat the nuts up in a Snicker bar, for example, they're not going to turn to a liquid. I don't think that's going to impact my investigation too much, but it's something to be aware of. So that's how I might fill out my investigation sheet. And remember, you can be really creative with your experiment. For example, if you're doing the dissolving experiment, you might choose different things to try and dissolve in water, and you might see if you can always get them back. Obviously, there would always have to be soluble things you were dissolving in your water. You might stick with a soluble substance, for example, sugar or salt, and you might try it in different liquids, and you might see is it always a reversible change? Can you always separate your liquid from your soluble solid? So you can really be creative with these investigations. If you're not sure, have a listen to this chunk again and see if you can create your own investigation using this template. The final thing you're going to need to do today is, after you've completed your investigation template, you're just going to need to make a list of the resources that you will need in order to complete your investigation. And if you're back in school by the time that we do this investigation, then it'd be really good to bring that list in so we can make sure you've got all of the equipment and ingredients to complete your investigation. So don't forget to make almost like a little shopping list of everything you're going to be needing. And don't forget that includes equipment and ingredients. Well done for today's lesson. If you're not sure on anything, make sure you go back to a different chunk and re-listen again. And I look forward to seeing your investigation plans really, really soon. See you later, everyone.